You can now support Ghost Maps on Patreon. Simply look for We Are HANTU or click the link in the description. Inspired by an account from Elwin. Ghost Maps. Entry 130, Seletar, Singapore. Our last round of drinks arrive at this Bedok coffee shop. A yin yang for me, a taping for Brian. He's already shared 2 stories tonight from his time at a camp in Seletar. After he shares his 3rd, I'll conduct 3 other interviews tomorrow with the entities he encountered in these stories. As Brian takes a sip of his drink, I ask if he's ready. He nods and looks a little relieved. I check if he's all right, and he says, I just didn't expect to feel this tired after telling these stories again. I say that I understand how he feels. You give a bit of yourself when you share a story. What I don't say is that there's a certain weight to being a keeper of these stories too. Instead, I switch my recorder back on and ask him to start from the beginning. The cookhouse was always a welcome sight for Brian and his campmates. It was where they had their lunch, a much-needed respite from their mostly busy days. It was the usual meeting point for him and his friends from all around camp for their late afternoon smoke break. And, as he learned late in his national service stint, it was a shortcut back to the company line when booking in a night. I used to strictly follow the road around the cookhouse, he says, with a chuckle. But one of my buddies told me that most people just walk through it. No need to be so good boy lah, he said. There was one downside to using the cookhouse as a shortcut though. It could be unnerving, walking alone through there at night. With the lights off, the street lamp's beams danced on harmless objects in a way that made them seem sinister. A chair looked like someone hunched over in the corner, ready to lunge at you. The reflection of a metal railing looked like a pair of glowing eyes, watching your every move. If you were booking in later than the assigned 2359 though, the atmosphere within the cookhouse was even eerier. One of the officers would almost always play a CD of Buddhist chants after midnight, Brian says. The men tried to find out why, but the officer would just brush them off. Don't ask so many questions, he would say. There was one night, however, the officer deviated from his routine. Brian was late. At this point in his 2-year national service, though, he knew the guards and the company orderly would cut him some slack. Still, he walked briskly from the camp's gate to his company line. He was so caught up in making good time that he didn't notice that there were no chants echoing within the cookhouse. Not at first, at least. He was about halfway through the cookhouse when it struck him. As eerie as the chanting was, the silence seemed worse. It was like walking into a crowded room, but there was no one there, Brian says. Brian shivered and started to pick up his pace even more. But completely stopped in his tracks when he heard a table move. And then another. And another. His eyes darted around, hoping to see a campmate stumbling through the darkness. He didn't see anyone. He certainly heard something, though. It started out faint, but grew louder and louder. The sound of someone barking orders.
On the left, march, left, 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 right, left.
Not the familiar shouts of one of the camp's unchiks or officers, but someone British? Brian was more confused than frightened. And then he saw them. A whole platoon of soldiers marching through the cookhouse. British soldiers, wearing uniforms from World War II. The platoon seemed to come from nowhere. They didn't acknowledge Brian but kept marching forward. Brian's eyes were locked on them, too scared to blink, in case they would turn and attack him in that split second. He had to eventually blink though, and when he did, they were gone. He would have chalked it up to a momentary hallucination, except that he could still hear that one soldier barking orders.
March, left, 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 right, left.
His shouts fading into the darkness of the night. Brian stopped walking briskly. And not for the first time during his national service, ran back to his company line instead. I ask him if he ever saw the soldiers again. No, man, he says. I had like 3 months left in my NS. I just avoided the cookhouse after sunset. He finally understood why the officer played the Buddhist chants almost every night. He just didn't know why the officer didn't play them that night. He had heard theories, though. The most common one was that he needed to let the soldiers march for one night, or they would get angry, he says. He laughs and shakes his head. The one night, and I cannot. Maybe I was right. What I said at the start. Maybe I'm Suela. I laugh along with him as we both finish our drinks. Then I thank him for his stories and get up to leave. It's the night after my interview with Brian. I'm walking down the same road he used to walk down when booking in, way back in 1995. Many parts of this camp have been opened up to the public since then. These days, the area is probably better known for its hip cafes and restaurants than it is for its army facilities. His company had moved to another camp a couple of years ago. So, their cookhouse isn't here anymore. Still, it's easy to find a quieter road near where the cookhouse used to be. And tonight's the same night that Brian saw those ghostly soldiers 30 years ago. I look at my watch. 2359. Faintly in the distance, I hear the barking of orders.
Left, 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 right, left.
And soon, sure enough, I watch as a whole platoon of World War II era soldiers appears, seemingly out of nowhere. Slowly, I approach the spectre that's giving the orders. Based on my understanding of their ranks, I'm guessing he's a sergeant. He seems to not notice me, no matter how close I get. I call out to him and he doesn't even spare me a glance. Finally, I can no longer hold my gaze. I blink and they're gone. Like Brian and his campmates, I have my own theories about these soldiers. They didn't acknowledge me or Brian, which I suspect means that they can't see us. And that means that they don't know they're dead. They don't know that the war is over. My guess is that this particular platoon died tragically and can't find peace. So they're forced to fulfill their duties forever. I might have to rope in a friend, Father Aloysius, to help me figure out a way to grant these soldiers some closure. After all, they've waited for it long enough. I walk a bit further in to try and find another entity that Brian encountered. The lady in white, in the trees, from his second story. I walk along the road lined with trees and street lamps. It's not the gloomy stretch that Brian traversed. The lights are brighter these days. But still, I can sense a presence watching me. The birds in one of the trees start squawking and screeching loudly, flying off as if startled by something among them. I do what most people shouldn't in this situation. I look up. "Apa khabar, de?" the lady in white says. She sounds oddly friendly, even slightly surprised, like she sees something in me that she doesn't see in others. She is standing on one of the branches, her head tilted downwards. I can't see her face, but the blood on her dress tells me everything I need to know. I respond politely, with a hello of my own, then ask her if I'm welcome here. "It is very nice of you to ask," she says. "I do not hunt here. I come here to rest. I only attack if I'm provoked." I ask if anyone's provoked her here before. "Once," she says. "A group of pale men from another land. Soldiers." I try not to react to this, but make a mental note that Father Aloysius might have his work cut out for him. "They don't know about my kind the way our people do. They fired their guns at me. I responded appropriately." I tell her that I understand, then ask her if I can continue on my journey further into the camp. She smiles. I can't see it, but I can tell. I know it's not a malicious smile, but it sends a shiver down my spine nonetheless. Then she says, "Please continue, but you might not like what you find." She pauses, then whispers loud enough to punctuate her sentence. Collector. The demon is waiting for me as I get closer to where the bunks used to be. I can't see it, but again, I know it's there. Hello, collector, it says, and a voice of an old man. Then, in the voice of a little girl, it continues. Someone like you are very brave to come here. I tell it that I'm not here to seek trouble. You want to know why I took little James? It says. Its voice now that of a young man, much like Brian's. I nod, keeping my eyes locked dead ahead onto the road in front of me. What will you give me in return? It says, with an old woman's voice. Do I get to keep your soul? I've always wanted one of your kind. I tell it that it knows I can't do that. I say that all I can offer is that I can keep its story alive. I say, and isn't that what you want? That's why you possess that man, right? So that people will tell your story? The demon says, sounding like an old man again. Mostly, it was because he was such a good boy. A good boy who was going through a rough time at home. It made him easy pickings. But yes, it says, sounding like a bored housewife. Yes, your predecessor recorded one of my stories before. Long ago. The demon says that it was too long ago. Now it sounds like an angry, middle-aged man. People stopped being scared. I had to remind them. I tell the demon that I understand and I thank it for sharing its story. What if I don't want to let you go? It says, as I turn to walk away. What if I decide that my story would be better served if I was the one who captured the famous collector? I don't turn back around. Instead, I simply say that that won't be happening. So long as I know its name. A name that I then whisper. The trees around me start to shake violently, as if struck by a strong wind. But the air around me remains still. I tell the demon that I'm going to walk out of here, unharmed. I add that since it knows who I am, it must also have heard about the kinds of things I've faced before. That incident from last year, the demon says, in a little boy's voice. You think I'm weaker than some little girl? I remind the demon that that little girl was more than she appeared to be. And I remind it how I dealt with that entity. I would prefer not to do something similar to you, I say. The demon growls. Not like a person, but like an animal. Then it laughs. You didn't defeat that entity alone, though. it says. And you are not as strong as you were back then, are you? Even though I cannot see it, I can sense its knowing smile. Then, like the lady in white, it punctuates this last sentence with a single word. It doesn't call me collector, though. It calls me by my real name. I stop. Just for a moment. Stunned. Go then, it says. Leave. There's no point in me taking your soul. It will be too easy, since you don't have much time left anyway. I don't say anything, but start walking again. The demon starts to laugh again. Good night, collector, it says. If you want to discover more of Southeast Asia's other side, subscribe now and follow us on social media. You can also be one of our supporters on Patreon. Look for We Are HANTU or click the links in the description. Ghost Maps is a HANTU production created by Kyle Ong and Wayne Ray, with art direction by Jolene Lim, and recorded on Audio Technica mics.